Before you move on, pause for a moment and pay attention, because what unfolds on July 26th is not simply another page turning on the calendar, and it is far more than an ordinary Sunday fading into the familiar routine of daily life. This day carries a different atmosphere from the very beginning. It does not announce itself with dramatic events or obvious signs. Instead, it arrives softly, almost invisibly, like a quiet breeze that slips into a room before anyone notices the windows have changed. Yet beneath that calm surface, an ancient current begins to awaken. A force that has been patiently waiting beneath the noise of everyday existence starts to rise. Saturn, the guardian of time, the unwavering steward of karmic balance, and the silent witness to every decision, every hesitation, and every promise you have ever made to yourself, has entered retrograde. When Saturn begins this backward motion, the greatest changes rarely appear first in the outside world. Instead, your inner landscape becomes the true stage of transformation. Your attention is slowly drawn away from distractions and redirected toward the one place many people spend their lives avoiding, the honest conversation with themselves. Perhaps you have already sensed the beginning of this shift without having the words to describe it. Maybe there has been an unfamiliar pressure resting quietly inside your chest. Perhaps your thoughts have carried an unusual weight, as though every reflection now asks for greater honesty than before. There may even be an unmistakable feeling that something important is approaching, not as an external event, but as an awakening deep within your own consciousness. None of these experiences are accidental. The fact that you are hearing these words at this exact moment is not something to dismiss as chance. It can feel as though an invisible thread has guided you here, leading you toward a message your spirit was ready to receive before your logical mind even recognized the need for it. Stay present with this moment, because what follows is not designed merely to capture your attention. It is meant to prepare you for a cycle that asks more of you than simple curiosity. The heavens have shifted into a new rhythm. The energetic landscape has quietly changed, and without fully realizing it, you have already crossed into different territory. You are no longer standing where you once stood. You have arrived at the edge of a threshold where old identities begin to dissolve and deeper truths begin to emerge. Before anything else can become clear, there is one reality that deserves your complete attention. Saturn has never existed to destroy your life or to punish your mistakes, despite the fear that has surrounded its name for generations. Its purpose has always been far more meaningful than punishment. Saturn serves as the great revealer. It exposes what can no longer support your evolution. It uncovers everything that has been built upon illusion, avoidance, fear, or self-deception. It removes only what cannot remain aligned with the person you are becoming. During this retrograde, comfort is no longer the priority. Authenticity becomes the only language that matters. This journey invites unfinished stories back into your awareness. It brings forgotten disappointments out of the shadows where distraction once concealed them. It uncovers emotional patterns you believed you had escaped, only to reveal that true healing had not yet fully taken place. You may already recognize the signs. Your mind feels tighter, your memories surface unexpectedly, emotions that seemed buried long ago suddenly return with remarkable clarity, asking to be understood rather than ignored. These moments are not random interruptions. They are the unmistakable presence of Saturn calling your attention toward a door you believed had been permanently closed. Saturn does not whisper endlessly, nor does it continue asking once the invitation has been ignored. It calls for responsibility. It calls for complete honesty. It calls you toward the version of yourself that has been waiting patiently while you postpone necessary growth. Many people will refuse this invitation. They will seek distraction instead of reflection. They will fill every quiet moment with noise because silence feels too revealing. They will run from the discomfort of truth. Yet something inside you has made a different decision. Whether you recognize it consciously or not, you remained here because a deeper part of your soul understood that this moment matters. The review has already begun. It does not arrive through obvious events or dramatic announcements. It unfolds quietly beneath the surface of your daily life, where avoidance has no lasting power. Every decision you have made, every opportunity delayed, every excuse created to remain comfortable instead of evolving, every occasion when your intuition gently pointed the way and you chose not to listen, each one now rises into awareness. You may notice time behaving in unusual ways. Familiar situations seem to repeat themselves. Faces from your past unexpectedly return without explanation. Old conversations echo through new circumstances. None of this represents meaningless confusion. It reflects a precise process of correction. Saturn Retrograde removes the comforting fog of illusion and places you before a mirror so honest that denial becomes almost impossible. This is where many people become uncomfortable because the reflection no longer allows stories that protect the ego from reality. Yet there is another truth that deserves equal attention. Turning away from this experience does not erase it. Whatever remains unresolved simply waits until another cycle demands your attention again, often with greater intensity and greater emotional weight than before. However, if you choose to remain present now, if you willingly meet this season with courage and awareness, something extraordinary becomes possible. You are no longer merely repairing what belongs to the past. You begin changing the direction of everything that comes next. There is an unmistakable quality surrounding today that is difficult to explain with ordinary language. It is not loud, dramatic, or chaotic. Instead, it resembles a subtle transformation in the atmosphere that only your deepest awareness can recognize. You may find yourself naturally withdrawing from empty conversations that once occupied your attention. You may become more reflective, more observant, more interested in what exists beneath appearances than in what simply entertains the surface. Your thoughts carry greater depth. Your emotions become more focused and more revealing. Rather than signaling that something has gone wrong, these experiences reveal that something profound is finally falling into its rightful place. And this inner alignment marks the true beginning of everything that follows. What if the slowing of your life is not evidence that something has gone wrong, but proof that something far more important is finally being given the space to emerge? That is the deeper invitation carried by Saturn Retrograde. It quiets the movement around you, so the voice within you can no longer be drowned out by constant distraction. The sense of heaviness you may be carrying is not a sign that you are losing your way. The uncertainty you have been trying to explain is not a personal flaw. What is rising inside you is awareness itself, moving from the hidden corners of your mind into the light of conscious recognition. This season is asking you to stop, not because your path has ended, but because your direction is being carefully realigned with something that reflects your highest truth more completely. The universe is not withholding your progress or placing unnecessary obstacles before you. It is adjusting your course with remarkable precision. Every moment of stillness has a purpose, even when that purpose feels uncomfortable. The more you struggle against this pause, the more intense it seems to become, because this experience was never designed to be outrun. It was created to be understood. Rather than filling every quiet moment with distraction, allow yourself to remain present inside it. Beneath the silence, there is a message that has been waiting patiently for your attention, and it has been speaking long before you were finally ready to hear it. Somewhere in your life, there is an issue you have quietly avoided, and if you are completely honest with yourself, you already know exactly what it is. The recognition appeared the instant the possibility entered your mind, even before another part of you rushed in with excuses or denial. It may involve a conversation you have delayed again and again, because facing it feels uncomfortable. It may be a reality you have refused to acknowledge, because accepting it would require meaningful change. It may be a responsibility that has been repeatedly pushed into tomorrow while hoping it would somehow lose its urgency. Whatever form it takes, it never truly disappeared. It simply waited until the timing was right. Now Saturn has gently but firmly returned it to the center of your awareness, making it impossible to overlook any longer. This is no longer something that can remain optional. It becomes the first invitation of this retrograde cycle. And although the action required is simple to describe, it is often one of the hardest choices to make. You must stop running from what you already know. Every attempt to move farther away from your truth quietly carries you farther from the life your soul has been trying to build. Facing reality does not require flawless execution. It does not demand that every answer already be waiting in your hands. It asks only that you become completely honest with yourself. Sit with what you have been avoiding. Name it without judgment. Allow it to become real instead of hidden. Begin taking the first sincere steps toward resolving it. This period has never been about becoming perfect. It has always been about choosing authenticity instead of avoidance, because the doorway Saturn now holds open cannot be entered through illusion. It can only be crossed through truth. What appears to be your past returning is also not what it first seems. Your history is not chasing you with the intention of trapping you inside old pain. It is waiting patiently for you to revisit it from a place of greater wisdom than you possessed before. The recurring patterns that once frustrated you are not evidence that you failed. They are lessons that remained incomplete because the understanding required had not yet fully matured. The emotional wounds you tried to ignore are not permanent signs of weakness. Hidden within them are pieces of your own strength that have never been fully claimed. The fears that still emerge during quiet moments are not proof that something is fundamentally wrong with you. They are unopened doors that have remained part of your journey because they were never completely walked through. Saturn Retrograde is not inviting you to live in the past again. It is inviting you to revisit it with transformed awareness, so that you no longer carry those experiences unconsciously into your future. That transformation becomes possible only when you stop viewing your past as an enemy that must be escaped and begin recognizing it as an essential part of yourself that must be understood and integrated. Every situation you once avoided now contains a lesson capable of unlocking your next stage of growth, but only if you approach it with openness instead of resistance. Somewhere along your journey, you also left behind a portion of your own inner strength. Not because you lacked the ability to hold it, but because at that stage of your evolution, you had not yet developed the understanding necessary to use it wisely. Life first asked you to experience disappointment, uncertainty, success, failure, rebuilding, and transformation. Only after those chapters could the deeper meaning become clear. Now the energy has changed, and that forgotten strength is calling your name once again. This becomes the second invitation of Saturn Retrograde. You are being asked to reclaim your power, not through control, aggression, or the need to prove yourself, but through conscious awareness and deliberate intention. That process begins by honestly examining where your energy has been continuously flowing away from you. Notice the moments when you searched for approval from people who were never capable of recognizing your true value. Notice the times you made yourself smaller so you could comfortably fit into environments that were never designed to support your expansion. Observe every place where you abandoned parts of yourself simply to feel accepted. Those patterns cannot accompany you where your growth is leading. You did not come into this life to endlessly repeat cycles that limit your potential. You came here to end them completely. Saturn refuses to let you forget that truth any longer. It positions you directly before the fullest version of your own potential and quietly asks a question that no one else can answer on your behalf. Will you finally choose to become the person you already know you are capable of becoming? Above every external achievement, there is one quality Saturn continues to value above all others. It rarely announces its importance. Yet it measures this quality again and again throughout every stage of your journey. That quality is discipline. Not the temporary determination that appears for a few inspired days before disappearing when life becomes difficult. Not the excitement that depends upon visible rewards or immediate results. Saturn is concerned with something much deeper. It honors the quiet discipline that continues when no audience is present, when recognition never arrives, when progress feels invisible, and when every emotion inside you argues for surrender instead of persistence. That unwavering commitment becomes the foundation upon which every lasting transformation is built. And as this retrograde continues, you will begin to understand why Saturn refuses to settle for anything less. Pay close attention to where your energy naturally flows during this Saturn retrograde, because that quiet pattern is revealing far more than you may realize. Saturn is not only asking you to examine your goals or your accomplishments, it is illuminating the invisible choices you make every single day. It watches where your attention settles, how you invest your hours, what conversations you continually return to, what habits you reinforce without thinking, and what people, environments, or distractions quietly consume the strength you were meant to use elsewhere. As this retrograde continues, all of these hidden patterns move into the light, where they can no longer remain unnoticed. You may suddenly find distractions becoming unusually attractive, almost as if the very habits you believed you had outgrown are calling your name once again. Old routines can begin to resurface without warning. Your concentration may drift in ways that seem so subtle you almost dismiss them. None of this is happening by chance. This is the examination Saturn places before you. It is inviting you to become completely accountable for the way you manage your own energy, because your energy is the true currency from which your reality is built. Every minute spent feeding thoughts that weaken your confidence, every habit that quietly pulls you away from your deeper purpose, every decision that places temporary comfort above lasting alignment, creates consequences that accumulate over time. Yet this principle works in both directions. Discipline also grows through repetition. Every occasion when you choose focused action instead of easy distraction, every promise you keep to yourself when giving up would feel far more comfortable. You are constructing something that cannot always be seen immediately, but becomes incredibly powerful with time. You are creating inner stability. Once that foundation becomes strong enough, circumstances outside of you lose their ability to shake your peace the way they once did. Challenges may still appear, but they no longer determine your emotional state, because your center has become rooted somewhere far deeper than temporary conditions. As this retrograde moves further into its cycle, another experience may quietly begin to emerge, one that often feels impossible to explain through logic alone. Your relationship with time itself may begin to transform. Certain days seem to move with extraordinary slowness, as though each hour carries an unusual density that asks you to notice every detail. Then, without warning, other moments disappear almost instantly, slipping beyond your awareness before you even realize how quickly they have passed. This strange rhythm is not a trick of your imagination. Saturn governs time itself, and when its motion turns inward through retrograde, your own perception naturally begins to shift alongside it. This change is not intended to leave you confused. It exists to awaken a level of awareness that everyday routines often keep hidden. Through this altered experience, you begin recognizing how unconsciously you have been using one of your greatest resources. You notice where you constantly hurry without purpose. You become aware of where procrastination quietly steals opportunities that once seemed endless. You recognize the repetitive cycles that absorb your attention while giving almost nothing meaningful in return. Time is no longer flowing around you as an unnoticed background experience. It now stands before you, asking direct questions about the life you are creating. Every moment becomes an invitation to choose deliberately instead of automatically. You begin realizing that time is not merely something that happens to you. It is something you actively shape through every thought, every priority, and every decision. During this retrograde, each passing second carries greater meaning than it normally appears to hold. The choices you make now will continue echoing far beyond this season, influencing chapters of your future that you cannot yet fully see. At the same time, Saturn begins directing your attention toward another area, where truth can no longer remain hidden. There are people, situations, and environments that have quietly remained part of your life even though they no longer reflect the person you are becoming. Deep inside, you have probably sensed this for quite some time. There has been a subtle discomfort that never completely disappeared, a quiet inner knowing that something no longer fits as naturally as it once did. Yet you continued accepting it because avoiding confrontation often felt easier than creating necessary change. Saturn no longer supports that compromise. Throughout this retrograde, your relationships begin revealing themselves with remarkable clarity. Patterns that once seemed confusing suddenly become obvious. You recognize where your emotional energy has been continually drained. You begin seeing every moment when your boundaries were crossed, while you convinced yourself to remain silent. You finally notice the imbalance created by repeatedly giving more of yourself than you ever received in return. It is important to understand what Saturn is teaching through these realizations. Establishing healthy boundaries is not an act of selfishness. It is an essential expression of self-respect. You are never meant to carry responsibilities that belong to someone else. You are not required to remain inside spaces that continually reduce your confidence, your peace, or your capacity to grow. This becomes the fourth invitation presented during this retrograde. You are being asked to establish clear boundaries, not through anger, blame, or resentment, but through quiet certainty. Your personal growth does not require universal approval. You do not owe endless explanations to people who are unable or unwilling to understand the direction your life is taking. What matters is that you honor your own evolution with consistency. Every healthy boundary you establish clears space for relationships, opportunities, and experiences that genuinely support the person you are becoming. As this cycle continues unfolding, another pattern may begin emerging in ways that feel both surprising and deeply meaningful. Individuals from your past may unexpectedly return. Messages may arrive from people you never expected to hear from again. Chance encounters may occur with timing that feels almost impossible to dismiss. Old memories can suddenly rise into consciousness with extraordinary vividness, asking for your attention in ways they never have before. These experiences are not random interruptions. They reflect karmic connections being activated once again through Saturn's influence. There is only one reason these people return to your awareness during this period, and that is to complete what remained unfinished between you. Completion does not always appear in the form of reconciliation, nor does every return signal that someone belongs in your future. Sometimes the greatest gift is closure. Sometimes the purpose is finally seeing a relationship exactly as it always was, without illusion clouding your perception. Sometimes the lesson lies in recognizing how profoundly you yourself have changed since that chapter first began. When these moments arrive, they ask for conscious awareness rather than emotional reaction alone. Not every person who returns is meant to remain. Some enter your path briefly to reveal a truth you could not previously see. Some arrive to confirm a lesson that has finally been learned. Others appear simply to complete a cycle before quietly leaving once more. The real transformation never depends upon who comes back. It depends entirely upon how you choose to respond. If your response is guided by the same unconscious patterns that existed before, the cycle simply begins again. But if you answer from the wisdom, self-awareness, and inner growth you have cultivated, that karmic cycle reaches its completion. allowing you to step forward into the next chapter, carrying freedom instead of repetition. The greatest advantage you possess during this Saturn retrograde is not the ability to predict everything that will happen around you. It is the ability to decide who you become while those events unfold. That is where your real strength has always lived. Circumstances will arise that challenge your patience in unexpected ways. Situations may test your emotional balance, your ability to remain centered when pressure begins to build, and your willingness to stay grounded when everything around you seems uncertain. There will likely be moments that awaken old emotional responses. Certain conversations may trigger forgotten wounds. Unexpected delays may invite frustration. Life may seem determined to push you toward discomfort, yet none of these experiences arrive with the purpose of defeating you. Saturn is not interested in watching you collapse beneath pressure. It uses pressure to refine what is genuine and expose what is no longer serving your evolution. This leads to the fifth invitation presented throughout this retrograde. You are being asked to master the way you respond. That mastery begins with something remarkably simple, yet profoundly difficult. Pause before reacting. Allow yourself to witness your emotions without immediately obeying them. Create enough space between what you feel and what you choose to do. In that space, awareness begins replacing impulse. Every reaction, even the ones that appear automatic, contains a choice hidden within it. During this retrograde, those choices become more meaningful than ever because they determine whether an old pattern continues repeating or finally reaches its conclusion. Each time you answer life from a place of greater awareness, you weaken the influence of the past. Every time you react unconsciously, the familiar cycle quietly strengthens itself once again. That single difference determines whether you remain inside the same chapter or finally step into one that reflects a higher version of yourself. As this journey unfolds, you may also notice another quiet transformation taking place within you. The constant noise that once seemed normal begins losing its appeal. You may find yourself longing for silence in ways you never expected. Crowded conversations, endless stimulation, and interactions that once occupied your attention may suddenly feel exhausting or unnecessary. This does not mean you are disconnecting from the world. It does not mean you are becoming isolated. It reflects a deeper process of alignment. Saturn retrograde gently guides your awareness inward, encouraging you to reconnect with your own inner voice before listening to everyone else's opinions. Within genuine silence, truths begin revealing themselves naturally. They do not need to force their way into your awareness because they have been patiently waiting beneath layers of distraction all along. When external noise fades, clarity rises on its own. This season is asking you to become comfortable in your own presence. Sit with your thoughts instead of escaping from them. Allow yourself to hear the subtle messages that only appear after everything else grows quiet. This is the environment where intuition becomes stronger. This is where awareness develops greater depth. Silence is never an empty void. It is sacred space where something meaningful is quietly taking shape beneath the surface of your ordinary life. At the same time, there is likely a path standing before you that you have hesitated to embrace completely. The hesitation does not exist because you fail to recognize the opportunity. Deep down, you already understand what it demands from you. It asks for consistency that continues long after inspiration fades. It requires responsibility that remains steady even when no one notices your effort. It calls for commitment that survives beyond temporary excitement or emotional motivation. Saturn has never rewarded half-hearted effort, nor does it respond to endless indecision. Its energy always answers unwavering commitment. This becomes the sixth invitation offered throughout this retrograde. You are being encouraged to choose your direction fully, without continually searching for easier alternatives whenever the journey becomes challenging. This is the season that quietly asks whether you are genuinely prepared for the future you claim to desire. Wanting a different life and committing yourself to creating it are entirely different experiences. Desire alone changes nothing. Commitment expresses itself through action. It continues moving forward when progress feels slow. It remains faithful during moments of uncertainty. It keeps taking meaningful steps even when doubt begins whispering familiar fears into your mind. Saturn watches these choices carefully, not because it wishes to judge you, but because it is revealing whether you have developed the stability required to hold everything you have been asking life to provide. Something remarkable begins happening once your commitment becomes complete. The path ahead gradually grows clearer. Obstacles that once appeared overwhelming begin losing their emotional weight. Resistance slowly dissolves because your own certainty becomes stronger than your hesitation. What once seemed impossible starts feeling increasingly inevitable as your actions align with your intentions. Yet before this retrograde completes its deeper work, Saturn places one final invitation before you, one that countless people spend their entire lives avoiding. It is neither comfortable nor simple, and it cannot be bypassed through positive thinking alone. You are being asked to meet your deepest fears directly, not the fears you casually admit during ordinary conversations, but the quiet ones that have secretly influenced your choices for years. The fears that silently determined what risks you avoided. The fears that established invisible boundaries around your life without your conscious permission. These fears did not appear randomly. They stand as the final threshold between your current identity and the fuller version of yourself that you have sensed for a long time, but have not yet completely embodied. Saturn does not remove those fears on your behalf. Instead, it gently places you before them and invites you to walk through them consciously. Resistance may immediately appear. Doubt may speak with convincing confidence. Every instinct may encourage you to retreat toward what feels familiar, because familiarity often disguises itself as safety. Yet this is the moment that shapes everything which follows. Fear is not evidence that you should stop moving forward. It often appears precisely because you are approaching something deeply significant. The more directly you meet it with awareness instead of avoidance, the less authority it continues holding over your decisions. This is where transformation becomes something tangible rather than theoretical. It stops being an inspiring idea and becomes a lived experience that permanently changes the way you understand yourself. Along this journey, another realization may quietly emerge. You have been carrying something far longer than you recognize. It has become such a familiar part of your existence that you eventually stopped questioning why it remained there at all. This burden is not physical, yet it has influenced nearly every step of your life. It consists of outdated expectations placed upon you long ago, identities that no longer reflect who you have become, silent obligations you never consciously chose but continued carrying simply because they had always been there. Saturn retrograde is not increasing the pressure you already feel. Instead, it is revealing everything that no longer belongs on your shoulders. This awareness may first appear as emotional heaviness, mental exhaustion, or a sudden recognition of just how much invisible weight you have been supporting. These realizations are not meant to overwhelm you. They are intended to awaken you. Lasting alignment cannot emerge while you continue holding burdens that were never meant to accompany your future. Releasing them does not always require dramatic endings or life-changing announcements. Sometimes, transformation begins through a quiet decision made entirely within yourself. Sometimes, it begins the moment you finally acknowledge that a certain chapter has already reached its natural conclusion. Even the smallest act of letting go creates room for something healthier to enter. This is the true rhythm of transformation. It does not begin by endlessly adding more responsibilities, more identities, or more expectations. It begins by removing everything that no longer reflects your authentic path. Deep within you, there is also a truth that has existed for much longer than you may realize. It has spoken softly during quiet moments, It has returned again and again, despite every attempt to distract yourself from hearing it. You may have questioned it. You may have minimized its importance or convinced yourself that it could wait for another time. Yet it has never truly disappeared. Now that truth rises with a level of clarity that becomes increasingly impossible to ignore. Saturn Retrograde has a remarkable way of stripping away every unnecessary distraction until only what is genuine remains standing before you. When that moment arrives, you are presented with a decision that no one else can make in your place. You may continue pretending you do not already know what your soul has been showing you, or you may finally accept it and begin allowing your actions to reflect that understanding. This truth may challenge the reality you currently inhabit. It may require meaningful change. It may ask more from you than you presently believe you are prepared to give. Yet it never appears without purpose. It rises because it is deeply connected to your growth. Ignoring it only creates greater tension within your own spirit. Choosing to face it creates movement, and movement, even when it feels uncertain or uncomfortable, will always carry you farther than remaining trapped inside the stillness of avoidance.